Well. Look who decided to click into another video with Swaggle House. I managed to fix my crooked cover A original art here of my comic book Sanity issue number 1. A lot of you guys pointed out that it was crooked the other day, so I happened to fix it. What if I did the entire video standing up like this, just in and out, straight, mo money, mo problem style. Okay, that was a little bit cringe. But I bring up mo money, mo problems because in this video, we need to talk about bailouts. Bank bailouts, financial institution bailouts. All of the money at the top gets bailed out. But you know what doesn't get bailouts? Comic books. Comic books do not get bailed out. Captain America 3-0. I've lost $200 of equity on this book right here. Still waiting for my bailout. Avengers, Kang. Another book I've lost $200 on. Still waiting for my bailout. Tales of Suspense 57. First Hawkeye. Kind of an underrated book right now, to be honest. Very, very underrated. Another book I've lost equity on, probably around $100, maybe $150 or so. And there's no bailout coming for that. Because in the world of comic books, in the world of collectibles, there are no bailouts. So in this video, we got to talk about this. We got to talk a little bit about the recent news of this SVB bank kind of collapsing, getting bailed out by our government, and how this can be a good warning sign to us comic book collectors, a good friendly reminder that when you over leverage, no one is here to save you. But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, doing those things, I appreciate it. Of course, like I already said, Kickstarter link in the description. Sanity, Rise of the Occult, Lovecraftian pulp adventure. Check it out. But with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about this news story. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Swag, what does bank collapsing, failing have anything to do with comic books here? Well, I think it has a lot to do with comic books on multiple levels. I think we can frame this in a lot of ways to what we do here in the hobby. And I think it's just important that, we have to talk about this a little bit first, just to sort of set the mood, set the tone, set our understanding, so that we can have kind of intellectual conversations about this. But if you guys don't know, over the weekend, SVB, one of the biggest banks in the States, I think they are in the top 20 banks out there based in the Bay Area, that did a lot of their banking for a lot of tech startups. Over the weekend, basically had a bank run, a major collapse of their bank, and the government had to step in and effectively offer a bailout in order to, not have the entire financial institution collapse. They were basically over leveraged. It was pointed out on Twitter that they were over leveraged. They were taking some risky bets in the current stock market. I mean, I'm not going to be able to kind of explain it better than a lot of other people out there in the, economic spaces can explain it. When the interest rates started to go up, that basically crippled whatever they were investing in. And then effectively that led to this bank run where all of these people who were banking with them wanted to get their cash out. And, sure enough, they didn't have the liquidity that was needed in order to pay out all the people that wanted to withdraw. And that is really, one of the big things, one of the, scary things about this sort of house of cards of finance that we all exist on. I mean, the reality is, if we think about all of the money that these banks presumably have, as far as the people who are banking with them and the companies that have, their holdings there, they do not have the liquidity. If everyone decided like, JP Morgan Chase, I don't feel like banking with you today. I'm going to move my money to Wells Fargo. If everybody decided that on one single day, that would absolutely destroy that bank and probably the entire global financial market. And so I think it is really interesting to think about that in terms of comic books here, because we always must remind ourselves that, as fun as this hobby is, as much as there has been a history of, values of comics going up and being able to hold a support floor, the entire value is based in the belief that there is value. And so there is always the risk that at any moment in time, there could be people that feel like selling their AF-15 for pennies on the dollar. If they just decide, I'm going to check out, here you go, put up my A15. That would absolutely cripple the value for comic books. And again, like I've already said in some of the other videos, if every comic book that wanted to be sold came onto market today, it wouldn't even be close. Wouldn't even be close to whatever the fair market value is for every comic book out there. So there is a lot of risk involved with this thing. And I think that it is something that we need to constantly remind ourselves with. Of course, it's been 2 years almost. 2 years since we've had Eternals #1 and Special Marvel Edition be those peak prices that they were in April of 2021, May of 2021. Whenever the trailers came out for this thing, these books were absolutely flying off the charts. And take a look at this graph. When's the last time you guys looked at the Eternals 1 9.8 graph? I mean, just look at this thing. I mean, you want to talk about bank run in comic books? Ever since we got April 30th, 2021 sale price of $3,800, we saw this book on the absolute decline to where we are today. The most recent sale of this calendar year, March 11th, $520 for CGC 9.8. You would have to go all the way back to even 2019 to get average prices of that particular range. In fact, actually, I overspoke. Not 2019. You're going to have to go to 2018 here to see when this book would be averaging that type of price all the way at the very beginning of the year, around the January, February, March time. You can see that this was a book that went from $311 to $846. And this again will forever be the book that is the perfect example of a bank run in comic book collecting. Similarly, Special Marvel Edition 15, first appearance of Shang-Chi. A lot of similarities between this book and also Eternals #1. Again, this one, not quite as big of a census, or Eternals #1 with a census of around 10,000. This one is an older book, slightly older, early bronze. You know, universal copies more around the $5,000 range. But again, look at that graph. What does that look like to you? Absolute panic out there in the streets. People wanting to get out of their 9.2s. People wanting to get out of their 9.4s right here. People wanting to get out of their 9.6s. And again, we've had conversations about buyers on the channel who bought the 9.8 for $16,000. But that's okay. At least there's only 100 9.8s out there on the census. Maybe 120, maybe 150, actually. So there's still a lot of potential, I think, for a character like Shang-Chi. Who knows? Probably not. I don't know. Marvel's not doing great right now. But let's talk about this. Let's talk a little bit about this idea and, you know, this idea of like the sort of the downside risk. You know, one of the things I always think about with my YouTube channel is talking about, you know, the mitigation of risk. I know some of you guys out there, you know, when you watch my channel, you think a little bit, you know, swagahos, you're a little bit too bullish on the market, especially when I do the index videos and things like that. But I like to think that generally speaking, I do an okay job letting people know that, you know, comic books, there's nothing guaranteed. There's nothing guaranteed with this, right? Like tomorrow, everything could go to zero. 100%. That 100%, it's all going to zero tomorrow. No, there is always a potential that all of these comic books could go to zero, which is why you have to be really smart, calculated, and at times conservative with how you approach it. Now, again, people work with very, very high numbers, very, very big volumes of this stuff. And, you know, they make transactions in the 5-figure range like it's Tuesday. And that, you know, for people, certain people's risk tolerance, they can do that. But for a lot of people, it's not going to work out so well. And this is something we always need to sort of remember. And, you know, again, I know not everybody out there is somebody who sells comic books or wants to kind of make money in this hobby. But the question you sort of have to ask yourself is like, what is the exit strategy? Like, you know, what was the end game for a lot of your books? You know, one of the famous sayings out there is that nobody ever went broke taking a profit. I mean, shout out to Matt out there. You know, we always talk about this where he wants to ask me, you know, when's the best time to sell your comic books? In fact, I've actually thought like maybe I should do a video that talks about when the best time to sell your comic books are. But the problem is like I wouldn't actually have 10 minutes of content in that because my answer to that question is always whenever you're in the green. For the most part, if you're somebody out there who is trying to make money in comic books or, you know, have the hobby pay for itself or use these as true like sort of speculative investments, I mean, you should be selling the comic book as soon as you have the ability to sell the comic book. I mean, anytime you're in the green, that is a win. It doesn't matter if you let a comic book go for, like a certain fair market value, you sell it, you make $200 profit, and then the next year, oh, damn, you could have made $400 profit. It doesn't matter. You still made $200 profit. As long as you are constantly in the green with the comic books that you're selling, you're going to be doing pretty well overall. Because again, there is risk to this. There is no bailout coming for loss of equity in your comic book collection. There is no bailout coming. You could be left holding the bag with some of the books that you decided to pick up. So, it is really interesting. And again, this is pure speculation. This is pure Pepe Sylvia Town tinfoil hat coming on here. But, when we think about SVB Bank and how they, are the main bank for a lot of startup companies, especially in the tech sector, and I think about companies like Whatnot, I don't know if Whatnot banks with SVB Bank, but, a lot of the rumors, a lot of the talk about Whatnot, having their whatever, $1 billion evaluation as recently as 2022, a lot of people have been talking behind the scenes about how Whatnot is looking to kind of build up their brand and then sell it off to like something like an eBay, and then everyone can get a payout there. And so the question to a lot of people who, are doing this by trade, as comic book sellers, do you have the ability, if Whatnot disappeared tomorrow, if the vehicle to which you sell comic books disappeared tomorrow, would you be okay? Would you be okay if all of the values of your comic books tomorrow went to zero? That's the question you kind of have to ask yourself. I mean, the chances of that happening are very, very low. Granted, I'm just saying, you have to think about the downside risk for a lot of this stuff. For a lot of people, I realize there's a lot of comic book dealers out there. You guys are very, very smart, very, very good about this. But generally speaking, for the people who are taking the big risks that are going for this, that started their Whatnot, selling account and made, free chicken tendies, the last 6 months to 12 months or whatever it is, the question is, if Whatnot shut down tomorrow, if eBay shut down tomorrow, if you didn't have the ability to sell your comic books on whatever platform you were selling them on, would you still be okay? Would everything be okay with your credit? Are you not over leveraged? If you couldn't sell any of these comic books for the next 3 years, would you be able to hold them and be in a position where you would be financially stable? That is some of the questions that you have to ask yourself when you get into this game. And as I look into, what's going on with the SVB Bank and, all of these things collapsing, this could create that little bit of that domino effect that has an effect on the global market. Again, as I've been doing the index videos, we've been looking at this stuff. And generally speaking, I've always kind of ended the videos with my thought process being, feels like we're going to trade sideways. And outside any cataclysmic event that happens, the values of comic books, generally speaking, are going to be able to hold. And if we look back to the 2008 crisis, it does seem like the floor values for the key comic books, the main key comic books, were able to generally hold at that time. They definitely didn't hit record highs. Maybe they lost 10 to 20% or so from their floor value, but generally speaking, they didn't go to zero. So if this is an indication of what is to come, bank collapse here, another bank collapse there, some more bailouts there, 6 months from now, if we enter something that is, very, very dire as far as the macroeconomic markets, will you be okay with your comic book collection? That is something that we have to ask ourselves. I don't really have any of the answers. That was just me having this conversation, talking about the risk that is comic books. Anyways, it's my friendly little reminder to you guys. Don't over leverage. Don't take gambles that are unnecessary. Don't buy 6-figure comic books on Heritage thinking that you're going to flip them next week for 10%, 20% returns. It's just not going to happen in this market. Anyways, not to be a Debbie Downer here. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and let's end the video with a funny picture of a cat. See you guys later.